The water closes over you like a held breath. You are already descending, already past the place where sunlight becomes something you remember rather than something you feel. The surface is gone. There is only the slow, dark weight of the Pacific Ocean pressing in from every direction, and the soft hum of the vessel around you, and the knowledge that you are going somewhere very few living things have ever gone. Your submersible is small. Titanium and glass, and a few inches of engineered pressure resistance between you and 11 kilometers of water. You are sitting with your knees drawn slightly toward you, the way you might sit reading a book on a quiet afternoon, except outside your viewport there is nothing to read. Not yet. The ocean here, at these early depths, is a deep and total blue, the kind of blue that has no name in any language you know. It is not the blue of sky or paint or shallow reef water. It is the blue of compression, the blue of apps and the captions, and it is beautiful in a way that makes something in your chest go very still. You watch a single particle of marine snow drift past the glass. It is a fragment of something that was once alive, a tiny flake of organic matter that began its journey at the surface weeks ago, falling through the water column the way a leaf falls through autumn air, slowly, without hurry, as if it has all the time in the world. And in a sense it does. Down here, time moves differently. Not faster or slower exactly, but with less urgency. The particle catches what little light remains and glows faintly, a pale ghost of the world above, and then it is gone, continuing its long descent below you. The depth gauge reads 1,000 meters. You are in the midnight zone now, the mesopelagic giving way to the bathypelagic, and the last traces of sunlight have been swallowed entirely. Outside your viewport, the darkness is not simply the absence of light. It is a presence. It has texture and weight. It presses against the glass with a kind of patient curiosity, as if it has been waiting here for you, as if it has been waiting here for a very long time. Your breathing is slow and even. The hum of the vessel is steady, almost musical, a low vibration that you feel more in your sternum than hear with your ears. The descent continues. You are falling in slow motion, dropping through a world that most of the ocean's creatures will never visit, a world that exists in permanent, absolute, unbroken darkness. Except that it is not entirely dark. Outside, something moves. A light blinks once, twice, a cool blue-green pulse that appears and disappears before you can fully process it. Then another, further away, a longer streak of cold fire tracing an arc through the black water. You are watching bioluminescence, the ocean's own language of light, written in chemistry rather than electricity, in luciferin and luciferase, in the slow oxidation of molecules that have been producing cold light in the deep ocean for hundreds of millions of years. The creatures making these lights have never seen the sun. They have no need of it. They have built their own sun, small and temporary, and perfectly suited to this world. A lanternfish passes close enough to the viewport that you can see the rows of photophores along its belly, tiny organs that produce light in patterns as specific as a fingerprint, used to communicate, to find mates, to confuse predators, to disappear against the faint downwelling light from above. It is no larger than your hand. It looks at you with one enormous eye, adapted to gather every possible photon in this lightless place, and then it is gone, swallowed back into the dark as if it was never there at all. You are at 2,000 meters now. The pressure outside your vessel is 200 times what it is at the surface. If the hull were to fail, the water would enter not as a flood, but as an instantaneous compression, a violence so complete, it would be over before your nervous system could register it. You sit with this knowledge the way you might sit with any large truth, acknowledging it, setting it gently aside, returning your attention to the dark water and the slow descent. The depth gauge moves. 3,000 meters, 4. The ocean floor of the abyssal plain lies somewhere below, but you are not heading for the abyssal plain. You are heading for something much deeper, a wound in the seafloor so profound that it has its own geography, its own climate, its own ecosystem. You are heading for the Challenger Deep, the deepest surveyed point in the Mariana Trench, a place that sits nearly 11 kilometers below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, deeper than Mount Everest is tall, deeper than most aircraft fly above the ground. The submersible continues its patient descent. You feel no sense of speed. You feel only the stillness and the dark and the very faint vibration of the vehicle around you, and the soft sound of your own breathing, and the knowledge that you are going somewhere extraordinary. At 5,000 meters, the character of the water changes. You cannot see this change, but you can feel it somehow. A shift in the quality of the darkness, a deepening of the silence. The creatures of the midwater are behind you now. You are entering the Hadal Zone, the deepest region of the ocean, named for Hades, the Greek underworld, not because it is a place of punishment, but because it is a place of transformation. Things that fall into the Hadal Zone do not leave. They become part of it. Another light passes outside. This one is different, larger, a slow pulse of red that seems to hang in the water for a moment before fading. Red light does not travel far in water. The creature that produces red bioluminescence is essentially invisible to most deep-sea animals whose eyes are tuned to blue and green. It is a private light, a secret light used by creatures that have learned to communicate in frequencies their neighbors cannot perceive. You watch it fade and feel something that is not quite loneliness and not quite wonder, but lives in the neighborhood of both. The descent continues. 6,000 meters. 7. The Mariana Trench is not a single uniform canyon. It is a long, crescent-shaped feature in the Western Pacific, stretching nearly 2,500 kilometers, formed where the Pacific Plate dives beneath the Mariana Plate in a process of subduction that has been ongoing for millions of years. The trench is the result of one piece of the planet sliding beneath another, a geological patience that makes human timescales seem like the blink of an eye. The rocks at the bottom of the trench are some of the oldest oceanic crust on Earth, ancient basalt that has been traveling across the Pacific floor for 180 million years, carrying its cargo of sediment and fallen organic matter toward this final resting place. You think about this as you descend. You think about the slowness of it. The way the planet moves and reshapes itself over timescales so vast, they become almost meaningless to a mind that measures time in heartbeats and seasons and years. And yet here you are, a creature of heartbeats and seasons, descending into the evidence of that vast geological patience, going to see what lives at the bottom of the world. 8,000 meters. The pressure outside is now 800 times the surface pressure. Water at this depth behaves differently than water at the surface. It is denser, slightly more viscous, compressed by the weight of everything above it. If you were to open a bottle of air at this depth, the air would not bubble upward. It would dissolve almost instantly into the surrounding water, absorbed by the pressure before it could form a bubble large enough to rise. The sediment on the walls of the trench, visible now as ghostly pale streaks in your floodlights, is extraordinarily fine. It has been accumulating here for millions of years, layer upon layer of microscopic particles, the compressed remains of countless generations of surface-dwelling organisms, radiolarians and foraminifera and diatoms, tiny creatures whose shells and skeletons rained down through the water column after they died, building up a sediment record that scientists call a geological library. Each layer is a page. Each page is thousands of years. You are descending through time as much as through water, 9,000 meters. The walls of the trench are closer now. You can see them in the edge of your floodlights, pale and irregular, streaked with sediment. The trench narrows as you go deeper, though it remains wide enough that you cannot see both walls simultaneously. It is like descending into a very deep valley in complete darkness, knowing the walls are there, sensing their presence rather than seeing them clearly. Your breathing remains slow. The hum of the vessel is your companion, constant and reassuring. Outside, the water is extraordinarily clear, cleaner than almost any water on Earth. There is very little particulate matter at these depths. The marine snow that falls from above is consumed long before it reaches here, eaten by the creatures of the midwater, broken down by bacteria, recycled back into the chemistry of the ocean. What reaches the Hadal Zone is the most refractory material, the stuff that nothing else could digest, compressed into the fine sediment that coats every surface. 10,000 meters, 1 more kilometer to go. You are deeper now than almost any living creature has ever been, deeper than the sperm whale dives, deeper than the elephant seal can reach. You are in a part of the ocean that was, until the middle of the 20th century, assumed to be completely lifeless. Scientists believed that the pressure at these depths would be incompatible with life, that the chemistry of living things could not function under such extreme compression. They were wrong. The first hint comes as a pale shape in your floodlights, moving along the sediment below you. It is a crustacean, an amphipod, a small shrimp-like creature no larger than your thumb, scuttling across the seafloor with a purposeful efficiency that seems almost cheerful given its surroundings. It is a species of Hirondelia, one of the hadal amphipods that have become the dominant scavengers of the deep trench ecosystem. These creatures have solved the pressure problem through chemistry. Their cell membranes are rich in a compound called piezolite, a small molecule that stabilizes proteins under extreme pressure, preventing them from being crushed and denatured by the weight of the water above. They are, in their way, a triumph of evolutionary engineering, perfectly adapted to a world that should, by all reasonable expectations, be uninhabitable. You watch the amphipod disappear under a ledge of sediment and feel the submersible slow its descent. You are approaching the bottom. The depth gauge reads 10,900 meters and is still moving, slowly now, as the vehicle's descent thrusters engage to slow your approach. You do not want to disturb the seafloor more than necessary. The sediment here is so fine and so loosely packed that even a gentle contact would send clouds of it billowing outward, obscuring your view for minutes. The floodlights illuminate a small circle of the seafloor below you. It is pale, almost white, a surface of extraordinarily fine sediment that looks like the surface of a very calm, very still sea. If that sea were made of compressed time and ancient shells. Descend the final meters slowly, watching the bottom rise to meet you, and then with the gentlest of contacts, a tremor you feel more as a cessation of movement than as an impact, you are there. You are at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. You are at the bottom of the world. For a moment, you simply breathe. You sit in your small sphere of light and warmth and air, and you look out at the seafloor of the Challenger Deep, and you let the fact of where you are settle into you like the sediment settling around you. 11 kilometers of water above your head. The weight of the entire Pacific Ocean pressing down on this small point. And yet here, in this place of impossible pressure and absolute darkness, you are not alone. The seafloor extends outward from your floodlights in every direction, fading from pale illumination into total black at the edges of your light. The surface is not flat. It is gently undulating, marked by the tracks of creatures that have passed this way. Shallow furrows and depressions in the sediment that speak of a life you cannot yet see. There are ripple marks in the sediment, not from currents, for there is very little current here, but from the passage of organisms through and over the seafloor, the biological reworking of the sediment that scientists call bioturbation. Something moves at the edge of your light. You watch it come closer, slowly, without apparent concern. It is a snailfish, a pseudoliparus, pale and almost translucent. Its body soft and gelatinous in a way that seems improbable for a creature living under such pressure. The snailfish is the deepest living vertebrate on Earth. It has been recorded at depths greater than 8,300 meters, and here it is, moving through your floodlight with the casual ease of a creature entirely at home. Its body is adapted to the pressure in a way that is almost counterintuitive. Rather than building rigid structures to resist compression, the snailfish has abandoned rigidity entirely. Its bones are soft and flexible. Its tissues are saturated with trimethylamine oxide, the same piezolite compound that the amphipods use, present in such high concentrations that it gives the fish a slightly sweet smell, though you will never know this. Its cell membranes are fluid and adaptable. It does not resist the pressure. It accommodates it, becomes part of it, makes the pressure its home. You watch the snailfish nose along the sediment, searching for amphipods, its primary food source. It moves with a sinuous, unhurried grace, its tail fin rippling gently, its body catching your floodlight and scattering it in pale, diffuse reflections. It is not beautiful in the way of coral reef fish with their bright colors and elaborate forms. It is beautiful in a different way, the way of things that are perfectly suited to their environment, the beauty of function and adaptation, and the quiet triumph of life in impossible places. The snailfish finds something in the sediment and pauses, nosing at it with a focused attention. Around it, you begin to notice more movement. The amphipods are becoming visible now that your eyes have adjusted to the scale of things here, dozens of them, moving through the sediment and over it, following chemical trails toward whatever organic matter has recently arrived. They are extraordinarily sensitive to the smell of food. A piece of organic matter falling to the Hadal seafloor can attract amphipods from hundreds of meters away within hours. They are the cleanup crew of the deep trench, processing the organic material that falls from above, converting it into energy and body mass, and eventually, when they die, into more sediment. You look more carefully at the sediment itself. Under the floodlights, it is not simply white. It has texture and variation. There are patches that are slightly darker, slightly more orange-brown, where organic matter has accumulated. There are areas that are more disturbed, where bioturbation has mixed the layers. And if you look very carefully, at the very edge of your optical resolution, you can see movement in the sediment itself. The almost imperceptible stirring of organisms too small to see individually but present in numbers that are, by the standards of this place, extraordinary. The sediment of the Mariana Trench is alive with bacteria. Not the bacteria of the surface world with their relatively simple chemistry, but Hadal bacteria, organisms that have evolved specifically for this environment, capable of functioning at pressures that would destroy the enzymes of surface-dwelling microbes. These bacteria are the foundation of the Hadal food web. They process the organic matter in the sediment, breaking it down into simpler compounds, making it available to the larger organisms above them in the food chain. Without these invisible, pressure-adapted microbes, the snailfish and the amphipods and all the other Hadal creatures would have no food. The entire ecosystem of the deep trench rests on a foundation of bacteria so small they are invisible, so numerous they are almost incomprehensible. You think about this as you watch the snailfish continue its patient search. You think about the layers of life here, each one dependent on the ones below it, each one adapted to the specific and extraordinary environment. The amphipods eating the bacteria processed organic matter. The snailfish eating the amphipods. And above them all, the long column of water through which everything that sustains this ecosystem must fall, the marine snow and the sinking carcasses and the slow rain of organic particles from the sunlit world 11 kilometers above. Something lands near your vessel with a gentle puff of disturbed sediment. Watch the cloud settle, slowly, the particles taking minutes to drift back to the floor in the still water. What caused the disturbance is already gone, moved off into the darkness beyond your lights. But the sediment cloud hangs in the water, glowing in your floodlights, a brief and beautiful nebula of ancient particles, and you watch it until it is gone. The temperature here is just above 2 degrees Celsius. Not freezing, because the pressure raises the freezing point of water, but cold enough that it would be lethal to an unprotected human in minutes. The cold is part of what makes this place so well preserved. Organic matter that falls to the Hadal seafloor is processed slowly. The cold temperatures slowing bacterial activity, meaning that material can accumulate over time, building up the sediment layers that record millions of years of ocean history. You turn your attention to the walls of the trench, visible now on the far edge of your floodlights as a pale, irregular surface rising above the seafloor. The walls of the Challenger Deep are not smooth. They are fractured and irregular, broken by the geological stresses of the subduction zone, covered in sediment that clings to ledges and fills crevices. Here and there, patches of bare rock are visible, dark basalt that has been exposed by slumping sediment or geological movement. The rock is ancient, its surface etched by the slow chemistry of deep seawater, colonized in places by the hardiest of the Hadal microorganisms. In the crevices of the rock, you can see the pale forms of holothurians, sea cucumbers, moving with extraordinary slowness along the rock surface, ingesting sediment as they go, processing it through their digestive systems, extracting the organic matter and expelling the mineral fraction. They are extraordinarily abundant in the Hadal zone. Some estimates suggest that holothurians can make up more than half of the total biomass of Hadal seafloor communities. They are not dramatic creatures. They do not glow or hunt or display elaborate behaviors. They simply move, slowly and persistently, processing the sediment, turning the geological library of the deep ocean through their bodies, participating in the slow chemistry of this place. You watch one holothurian for a long time. It moves perhaps a body length in the time you watch it, leaving a trail in the sediment behind it, a record of its passage that will persist until some other creature disturbs it or some new sediment falls to cover it. The trail is beautiful in its simplicity, a single line drawn in the pale sediment of the deepest place on Earth. The amphipods are gathering now in larger numbers around a dark patch of sediment to your left. Something has fallen here recently, something organic and substantial, a piece of a carcass perhaps, or a concentration of marine snow that arrived in a brief pulse. The amphipods swarm over it with focused energy, their small bodies moving rapidly, their mouth parts working. They will consume whatever has arrived here completely, leaving nothing but processed sediment. They are extraordinarily efficient. A fish carcass dropped to the Hadal seafloor can be stripped to bare bones by amphipods within hours. You watch the feeding frenzy with a kind of quiet fascination. It is not violent, exactly. It is more like watching a very focused and efficient process, life consuming the remnants of life, energy passing from one form to another in the cold darkness at the bottom of the world. There is something deeply satisfying about it, about the completeness of the cycle, about the way nothing is wasted here, the way every particle of organic matter that reaches this place is used, processed, incorporated into the living chemistry of the Hadal zone. Another snailfish appears, attracted by the activity of the amphipods. It is larger than the first, perhaps 30 centimeters long, its pale body catching your floodlight. It moves into the feeding amphipods with calm authority, snapping up individuals with quick, precise movements of its soft mouth. The amphipods scatter briefly, then return. The snailfish feeds, the amphipods feed. The bacteria in the sediment feed on what the larger creatures miss. The system is in balance, a balance that has persisted here in this form or something very close to it for millions of years. You become aware of a sound, not a sound you hear exactly, but a vibration you feel, a low, almost subsonic tremor that passes through the hull of the vessel and into your body. It is the sound of the earth moving. The Mariana Trench sits above one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. The subduction of the Pacific Plate beneath the Mariana Plate is not a smooth, continuous process. It happens in fits and starts, in episodes of grinding and slipping and sudden movement that generate earthquakes, some of them enormous. You are sitting at the epicenter of one of the planet's great geological engines, and you can feel it faintly in your bones. The tremor passes. The snailfish continues feeding. The amphipods continue their work. The holothurians continue their slow passage across the rock. The bacteria continue their invisible chemistry in the sediment. Everything continues, undisturbed by the movement of the planet beneath it. Because everything here has always lived with that movement, has always felt that tremor, has never known anything else. You think about what it means to be adapted to a place like this. To have evolved not just tolerance for extreme conditions, but a genuine, functional relationship with them. The pressure that would kill you is what keeps the snailfish's tissues intact. The cold that would kill you is what preserves the organic matter that feeds the amphipods. The darkness that would disorient and frighten you is simply the normal state of things here, neither threatening nor comforting, simply the medium in which life happens. There is a philosophy in this, something about the relativity of extreme conditions, about how what seems impossible from one perspective is simply normal from another. The Hadal Zone is not a hostile environment for the creatures that live here. It is home. It is the only home they have ever known, the only home their ancestors have known for millions of years. The pressure is not something they endure. It is something they are. You settle more deeply into your seat. Your breathing has slowed further. The hum of the vessel is steady and familiar. Outside, the seafloor of the Challenger Deep extends in every direction, alive with its slow, patient life, going about its business in the way it has always gone about its business, indifferent to your presence, indifferent to the fact that you are here watching, indifferent to everything except the next particle of organic matter, the next amphipod, the next slow passage across the ancient sediment. The floodlights illuminate a small polychaete worm emerging from the sediment, its body segmented and pale, its parapodia rippling as it moves across the surface. Polychaetes are among the most successful animal groups on Earth, found in virtually every marine environment from the intertidal zone to the Hadal depths. This one is small, perhaps 5 centimeters long, moving with the purposeful efficiency of a creature that knows exactly what it is doing. It pauses, extends its prostomium into the sediment, feeds briefly, then moves on. It is doing what polychaetes have been doing for 500 million years in environments far less extreme than this one, and in environments exactly like this one. 500 million years. You hold this number for a moment, Let it rest in your mind. The ancestors of this worm were already ancient when the first fish appeared in the oceans. They were ancient when the first creatures crawled onto land. They were ancient when the dinosaurs evolved and diversified and vanished. They have been here in some form through all of it, processing sediment and eating organic matter and going about their small, persistent lives, indifferent to the great dramas of the surface world. Something catches your eye at the very edge of your floodlights, a shape that is slightly different from the surrounding sediment, slightly more regular. You adjust the submersible's camera to get a better look, and as the image resolves, you feel a complex and somewhat uncomfortable emotion. It is a plastic bag, a white plastic bag, lying on the sediment of the Challenger Deep, 11 kilometers below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, in what should be the most remote and pristine environment on Earth. It is not the only piece of human debris that has been found here. The Hadal Zone, despite its remoteness and inaccessibility, is not immune to the reach of human civilization. Plastic waste, carried by ocean currents, eventually sinks. The heaviest and most persistent pieces reach even the deepest trenches. Scientists have found plastic in the gut contents of Hadal amphipods, evidence that the contamination of the ocean by human-produced materials has penetrated even to this deepest and most extreme environment. You look at the bag for a moment, then look away, back to the snailfish and the amphipods and the slow holothurians, back to the life that has been here far longer than any human civilization and that will, in some form, be here long after. The sediment near your vessel stirs. Something is moving beneath it, pushing up through the surface in a slow, deliberate motion. It is a foraminifera, one of the giant xenophyophores, a single-celled organism that can grow to more than 10 centimeters in diameter, making it one of the largest individual cells on Earth. It is a remarkable thing to look at, a fragile, irregular structure made of sediment particles cemented together with an organic secretion. The entire edifice built by a single cell as a kind of external skeleton. Xenophyophores are found only in the deep sea, and they are particularly abundant in the Hadal Zone, where the fine sediment provides ideal building material and the slow currents mean their delicate structures are not disturbed. You look at it for a long time. A single cell, building a structure from the sediment of the deepest ocean, living its slow, patient life in the darkness and pressure of the Challenger Deep. It has no nervous system, no brain, no behavior in any complex sense. It simply grows and feeds and reproduces and eventually dies and becomes part of the sediment it built itself from. And yet it is here, alive, in one of the most extreme environments on the planet, doing what it has been doing for hundreds of millions of years. Life finds a way. It is a phrase that has become something of a cliche, but standing here, in this place, watching this single enormous cell go about its business on the floor of the deepest ocean, the phrase feels less like a cliche and more like a simple and profound statement of fact. Life finds a way. It has always found a way. In the hot springs of Yellowstone and the ice sheets of Antarctica and the acidic pools of volcanic craters and here, in the cold darkness at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, life has found a way. The snailfish has moved away, back into the darkness beyond your lights. The amphipods have finished with the dark patch of sediment and are dispersing, following new chemical trails across the seafloor. The holothurians continue their slow passage. The xenophyophore extends a pseudopod into the sediment and withdraws it, feeding in its single-celled way, aware of nothing, experiencing nothing, and yet alive, undeniably and triumphantly alive. You feel your breathing slow even further. The hum of the vessel is very steady. The darkness beyond your floodlights is very complete. You are at the bottom of the world, and it is quiet here, profoundly, completely quiet. The kind of quiet that has nothing to do with the absence of sound, because there are sounds here, the faint clicks and movements of the amphipods, the distant geological tremor of the subducting plate, the soft hum of your own vessel. It is a different kind of quiet. The quiet of immense distance from the surface. The quiet of 11 kilometers of water. The quiet of a place that has never known human voices or human noise or the constant, restless sound of the inhabited world. You breathe. The sediment around you is still. A single amphipod crosses the field of your floodlights, moving with purpose towards something you cannot see. The pale walls of the trench rise above you on either side. You breathe. The water is very cold and very dark and very still. You think about the marine snow. About that single particle you watched drift past the viewport hours ago, at the beginning of your descent, glowing faintly in the last traces of sunlight. You think about how long it took to fall here. Weeks, perhaps. Drifting down through the water column, through the twilight zone and the midnight zone and the abyssal depths, falling through the darkness, falling past the creatures of the midwater with their cold bioluminescent lights, falling through the deep water of the trench itself, and finally settling here, onto this pale sediment to become food for the bacteria and the amphipods and the holothurians, to become part of this place. Everything that is here came from above. Every particle of organic matter, every nutrient, every trace of the sunlit world. It all fell here, slowly, over millions of years, building up the sediment layers, feeding the Hadal ecosystem, connecting this deepest and darkest place to the warm and sunlit surface 11 kilometers above. You are connected too. You came from above. You carry the surface world with you, and the air you breathe, and the warmth of your body, and the light of your floodlights. You are a visitor from another world, sitting in your small sphere of surface conditions, looking out at the Hadal world through your viewport. And the Hadal world looks back. Not with eyes, exactly. The xenophiophore has no eyes. The bacteria have no eyes. Even the snailfish's eyes are adapted to a different kind of seeing than yours, tuned to bioluminescence rather than reflected light, to the faint chemistry of the water rather than the sharp images of the surface world. But there is something in the quality of the darkness beyond your lights that feels like attention, like presence, like the deep, patient awareness of a place that has been here for a very long time and will be here for a very long time after you are gone. You breathe. The amphipod crosses back through your lights, moving in the other direction now. The sediment is still. The walls of the trench are pale in your floodlights. You breathe. It is very quiet, very still. The hum of the vessel, your own breath, the darkness. You think about the surface, about sunlight on water, about the way light looks when it enters the ocean from above, when you are swimming in shallow water and you look up and see the surface broken into shifting patterns of refracted light, the whole ceiling of your underwater world made of moving light. You think about how far away that is. How many kilometers of dark water lie between you and that light? And yet, the marine snow falls. The organic matter drifts down. The connection is there, invisible and slow and taking weeks to traverse, but there. Everything here is made of sunlight, transformed through photosynthesis and consumption and death and falling and bacterial processing and consumption again, but ultimately made of sunlight. The amphipods are made of sunlight. The snailfish is made of sunlight. The xenophiophore is made of sunlight. Even the sediment, the pale, fine sediment of the Challenger Deep, is made of the shells and skeletons of creatures that once lived in the sunlit surface waters and died and fell here over millions of years. Sunlight, transformed into the life of the deepest ocean. It is a thought that makes the darkness feel less absolute, less separate. More like a continuation of something rather than a negation of it. You breathe. The sediment is still. The holothurian moves. Very slowly. One body length. Then stops. You watch it. It moves again. Very slowly. The hum of the vessel is steady. Your breathing is slow. The darkness beyond your lights is very deep. You are 11 kilometers below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. You are at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. You are at the bottom of the world, and it is peaceful here. Genuinely, unexpectedly peaceful. There is no urgency here. No rushing. No noise of the surface world. No demands or schedules or the relentless forward press of inhabited time. There is only the slow movement of creatures adapted to slowness. The patient accumulation of sediment, the steady geological patience of the subducting plates. Everything here moves at the pace it needs to move. Nothing faster, nothing slower, just the pace of this place, which is very slow and very still and very dark and very quiet. You breathe. The amphipods move in the sediment. The holothurian moves. The bacteria work in their invisible way. The planet turns. Somewhere above you, 11 kilometers above you, the surface of the Pacific Ocean catches the light of the sun, or the light of the moon, or the light of the stars, depending on what time it is up there in that other world. Down here, there is no time. Not in that way. There is only the slow, the still, the dark, the cold, and the life. The persistent, patient, extraordinary life of the deepest place on Earth. You breathe in slowly, out slowly. The sediment is still. The water is cold. The darkness is complete. And you are here, at the bottom, at the very bottom, breathing. Still. The snailfish comes back. You see it at the edge of your light. Pale. Translucent. Moving slowly through the dark water just above the sediment. It does not notice you. Or perhaps it does notice you and simply does not care. You are not food. You are not a threat. You are simply a warm, bright thing in the cold dark, and the snailfish passes by you the way it passes by everything here, with the calm indifference of a creature that has never needed to be afraid. You watch it. It moves through your light. It enters the dark on the other side. It is gone. You breathe. The sediment is still. A particle of marine snow drifts through your floodlights. Just one. Pale and small. Drifting down. The way they all drift down. The way they have always drifted down. From the sunlit surface to this dark and quiet floor, you watch it settle. Very slowly. Onto the sediment. It lands without disturbing anything. It is simply there. Part of this place now. As everything here is part of this place. As you are, for this moment, part of this place. You breathe in, out. The hum of the vessel. The still water. The dark. The cold. The quiet. The bottom of the world. You breathe. Still. Quiet. Here.